Yeah, practice. Are we going? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. You guys, your sheets, a lot of times when you get a sheet, you don't read the direction, you just look at the picture, and you can kind of figure it out. After the demonstration, that probably will be the case. First, to show you a couple pinrolls. This is a 3-color pinroll, 3-color pinroll. This one obviously is just 2, okay? So kind of keep that in mind as we go. I'm going to show you a 2-color. This has several colors, and then the way you layer those and the depth of them gives you that blend, okay? So you've got pieces of clay like this. If this is all the brown you have, you're not going to want to use all your brown for one pinroll. You may want to use brown in a bullseye, in a checkerboard. So you're going to want to cut part of that and just use a section of it, okay? And for demonstration purpose, we'll use a little bit more than that. This piece is a little bigger. Okay. You're going to pat it down with your, how many of you did anybody use the rolling pins yesterday? Okay, did your clay stick to it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to figure out a way to avoid that. For one, we're not going to push down very hard, and number two, you're going to pat these down with your fingers first. Okay, so you're not trying to roll out a ball of clay. Okay, and then when you do roll, don't push down. This clay is so soft and responsive that I'm not even pushing on this. I'm just rolling it back and forth, and I'm not going all the way off the clay. And every other roll, I'm turning it over. Okay, so with the pin roll, we want it ideally to be the same thickness from one end to the other. So you can pick that up and check it. And the thinness of your clay determines, you know, how thin this line is that swirls within there. If you get this too fat, if it's too thick, then your pinroll's pretty fat, and you don't end up with a swirl. You end up with kind of like this little half circle. Okay, so there is an amount, you know, that you need to go pretty thin. You can go paper thin. Okay, it's a nice thing about polymer clay. All right, Franklin got in the video. All right, so we're going to lay the brown aside. And we'll start with the yellow. What do I need to do first? Do I need all this? No. So we're going to cut and just use a section. And again, this yellow is a little crumblier than the brown. So again, use your thumbs first and kind of get your little pad started. And then again, do I press down with the rolling pin?
No.
No, I'm just letting my fingers kind of float on that. I'm turning it over every other time. That keeps it even and it keeps it from sticking. And then you don't have to peel it off and tear it up. Okay, and then what do we need to check it for?
Equal.
Yeah, equal thickness. Yeah, equal thickness. Now, I like to have both of mine the same thickness. So I would want my yellow and my brown to be the same thickness, at least for your first one. Later you might decide you want a more dominant color for some of you who are doing distinguished, you know, if you need sky or a cloud or something. But let's kind of shoot for same thickness. Okay, we're going to lay those together. And then I'm just going to lightly roll them. I'm not trying to smash them. I'm just connect them. And then we're going to cut. These need to be the same. We want them to be about 1 inch wide. Okay, now this clay is not scrap. All right, you can carefully pull that apart, and I would do it immediately. The longer it sits, it's going to bond. So that is reusable, and you'll have to use that. Okay, we're not going to throw away little chunks like that. It goes a long way. Oh, my yellow might be. All right, and I'm going to cut the ends off. So we've got even ends. All right, the longer this is, obviously, the more wrap and the more swirl. Okay, but I wouldn't go any further than this. You know, 1.5 inches by 1 inch is good. On one end, no thicker than this is, I could probably just start rolling. But I'll go ahead and show you. You'll want to angle the end. I'm just kind of slicing my knife at a slight angle. Okay, that's the end you're going to roll with. And then you just start tucking this under right at the tip. And if you watch the side, you know, you can see the swirl starting. And I kind of stretch this a little bit as I roll it. Now, if you look at that on the ends right now, it's kind of messed up because you've got a little extra coming out the sides. So that gets trimmed off. Just trim off your little extra. And then that's what you've got as far as your pinroll. Now, you saw how thin mine was, and you see how thick we ended up with our pinroll, and that it doesn't even make a complete circle. It would have if my roll was just a teensy bit longer, but that would have made this, quarter size. So this is really bigger than the criteria. So the way you would shrink this down, let's make one more cut here. Let's get both ends off of it. There we go. So if you cut it on the end and you think, well, it doesn't look right, it could just be the little extra stuff, okay? The way you would shrink this down is don't start rolling it. That will skew the inside. All I'm doing is putting a little pressure on this and slightly tugging at it and keeping it uniform. And now if we cut it, so there's our first cut, and now we'll get the end off that's not. All right, so then there's our pinroll that's a little bit more appropriate size, okay? So if you've got one made and you know it's too big, bigger than like the end of a pencil eraser, I can show you, if you're scared to just start, afraid you're going to mangle it, you could shrink this down to half this size and it would be this long. Okay, so that would be a lot of cuts. So realize I started out with just tiny pieces of clay. We've had some people, again, gauge a little bit bigger, and then they end up with a cane, this long, and they really didn't want that much of those two colors. So again, just start small, do a little one, and see where that goes. You can always make another one as opposed to using up all your clay on the first one. So that's even smaller. Now, as far as the cutting part and putting it on the jar, so there it is, even a little smaller, okay? So when you're cutting this, you do want to cut paper thin, okay? And, I can pass that around. It's kind of hard. It's going to stick to your fingers. But you can kind of see if you want to lay that out in your hand and pass it on or show them. That's about as thick as you would want to go. Now, when you put it on your bottle, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go, oh, it stuck to my finger. It didn't stay on the bottle. Once you get a little residue of clay on your fingers, that might happen. You can go wash your hands anytime you want. But the way you're going to get it to stay on the bottle is if you just kind of rock it to get it there, okay? And then we want these to be flat on the bottle. So just kind of pat it a few times. We don't want to just thumb press it and skew it because then it's going to come off and you're going to mangle it, okay? So you just have to go at this kind of easy because we'll get people to have a really nice pinroll, and then again, just kind of rock your finger and it'll stay there, and then just a few little pats to get it in place. And then when you put your next one on, we want to make sure that if these two touch now, what happens by the time I pat that down, they're overlapping and I'm putting them on like scales. So make sure that when you put your next one on, you can leave a little teeny space between them because by the time you flatten those out, they'll touch, okay? And if there's still a little space, we'll fix that in the end when we roll it with the acrylic roller and make it all smooth, okay? So any questions? And again, you've got your little diagram there. Two colors rolled out flat, put them together, cut them, okay, so all sides are even, and then angle the end and roll it up, okay?